Hi. My name is Jim Duehr, and I'm your PhD student speaker for today. I want to start by thanking my fellow students for giving me this opportunity, Deans Filizzola and Charney, the Graduate Medical School Administrations, and the trustees of Mount Sinai for making today possible. This isn't going to be your typical graduation speech. If you were expecting Elle Woods from Legally Blonde, or Rory Gilmore's graduation from Chilton Prep, I'm sorry to tell you that this is not a small, charming town in Connecticut, and I'm unfortunately not that blonde. I could stand up here and lecture all the way to the back about how great we all are, and about how much we've all learned. And don't worry, I'll do some of that too. But what I'd like to do first is to say what I think it means for us to be here today. To have doctor at the beginning of our names, PhD and MD at the end. What it actually means for us to put in so much work and sacrifice so much in the name of science and medicine. For one, it means that all those long hours in the library and the lab actually have somehow paid off. There really was a light at the end of the tunnel. But more than that, it means we've accomplished something great. And in the words of the greatest fictional uncle who ever lived, with great power comes great responsibility. A few years ago, some of you out there were sitting with me in orientation. It seems a world away, doesn't it? A dean was giving us a speech, much like this one, about what it means to be a Mount Sinai student. Like me, you were probably zoning out, staring at the back of the head of the person in front of you, like your parents or friends might be doing right now. But I'll never forget what that dean said. It stuck in my memory, and I couldn't get it out of my head when I was writing this. He said that we were part of a team, and that over the course of the next 4 or 5 years here, a major disaster, or 2 or 3, would inevitably hit our team and knock it off kilter. And being part of that team meant keeping it together in difficult times, to support and to nourish each other when we needed it most. Looking back on that moment, I have to say my first inclination was to think of this time a few years ago when a lab mate of mine dropped a full bottle of Crystal Violet on the floor, shattering it and coating every inch of her lab coat, her pants, the walls, everything for several feet in every direction in this deep, vivid indigo. It was like Prince had just had his bar mitzvah in there. And if you didn't know already, parents, friends, let me be the first to tell you that Crystal Violet is the one dye that truly does last forever. To this day, and for future generations to come, that room in Annenberg will be a modern art masterpiece. In all seriousness, though, there really were a few crises that shook our foundation to the core in the last few years. Major events that made us pull together as a school to help keep this big community running. There were the largest Ebola and Zika epidemics in world history, which brought the first cases of both diseases not only to America's shores, but also to New York City's. There was the snowpocalypse of 2015, where the ominous threat of 3 feet of snow led to the preemptive closure of every street and every subway in the city for a night. I will never forget laying down in the middle of Fifth Avenue at 3 a.m., staring up, Annenberg towering over me, as snowflakes, one after the other, melted on the skin of my cheeks. There were also the tragic deaths of our fellow students, Catherine Stiscavige and Isana Gray. Dr. Isana Gray, in particular, was part of this PhD cohort. She was also a model scientist who I am proud to call a fellow graduate. She exemplified the best parts of us: her passion for teaching and communicating science to the next generation, her commitment to a life of learning and doing the best she could for others. Remembering that and carrying it with us every day is the best we can do to honor her memory. And lastly, we were here during perhaps the most tumultuous and divided election cycle this country has ever seen. In the last 5 years, a crisis of political extremism locally and globally has coincided with another crisis, an ideological one, that strikes much closer to home, one that affects the heart of what we're here to celebrate. We are experiencing a time right here, right now, in this country and around the world, where a huge percentage of society distrusts what we do. Distrusts the process and the products of biomedical and clinical research that is happening in the labs and the clinics a few miles northeast of this room, in the places that help shape who you are today. We only have to pick up a newspaper to feel the weight of this epidemic, born of misleading and harmful ideas. In 2000, the CDC declared measles officially eradicated in the United States. And I know this may make you feel old, but I want you to think about the 2 decades that have passed since then. Think about how different our world is. Measles, mumps, chickenpox. These diseases that used to be memories of the past are quickly becoming horrors of the present. 2019 is on track to be the worst year on record since then for vaccine-preventable illnesses. And what I want to focus on, class of 2019, is what we can do to change the direction our world is headed. How those 2 or 3 letters at the end of our names, MD or PhD, fit into all of this. I want to talk about the role of scientists and physicians in society. You may not realize it, but me and you and everyone in these fantastically fashionable robes up here on this stage, all of us, we owe a debt to society. And that debt is both one of money and of morality. Via the NIH and Congress, billions of dollars are poured into the laboratories and research programs that make our campus so vibrant and able to make such a great impact on human disease. And honestly, between you and me, couldn't it be just a few billion more? The public also places so much trust in us. Trust to hold the lives of others in our hands, trust to handle the world's deadliest diseases, trust to protect the future, trust in calling us doctor. And this makes sense, right? Because scientists and physicians and the places we come from are a public good, just like libraries or parks. If we're doing our jobs right, we benefit society. And that's what I want you to think about as you walk across this stage. How can we repay that debt? We can start by being the experts that society has invested in us to become. We can advise the public on what the data tell us about these massive problems our world is facing. We have the responsibility to be active members of the democratic process, advocating for laws that are backed by science, so that our kids, too, can enjoy New York's snowy winters and mild summers, so that they can survive past age 2 and avoid tragic and treatable illnesses. In the midst of a crisis of public trust in science, we have a duty to repay our debt by being honest and accountable experts, transparent in our research, and forthcoming with our expertise. We can act as advisors on matters of fact while making sure we don't misuse that trust and benefit from undeserved accolades on matters of opinion. When every instinct may be driving us towards the safety of the ivory tower, focusing exclusively on the easier problems of the bench or the bedside, we must resist that inevitable urge towards exclusion and privatization. We should make time for maintaining the health of the democratic experiment. This can take the form of small things, like voting for policies supported by science or participating in public demonstrations. It can also be much larger, such as writing essays, running for office, or testifying in front of government bodies. But whatever we do, we should strive towards repairing the fraying bonds between the scientific enterprise and the public that make our work possible. And when mom or dad asks if this bug bite looks infected, or if GMOs really do cause cancer, we can be humble and kind and compassionate listeners who do our best to communicate what we know, admit what we don't, and above all, strive to leave each patient, friend, family member, or stranger better and more at ease than when they walked into our lives. Above all, I think we should wear our newfound responsibility proudly, because that trust, that investment that our friends, family, mentors, and school have placed in us, I know we will do it justice. And I know we've gotten to this day because we've earned it. Thank you, and congratulations, class of 2019.